resort to terrorism, repeated resort to destroying the Indian economy, repeated resort even to nuclear weapons. I
Yeah.
mean, we know that even as we speak, Pakistan is determined to strengthen its nuclear proliferation and get even more nuclear weapons. And this has come even in a report released by the Defense Intelligence Agency of the USA. So the situation is very alarming as far as Pakistan's intentions are concerned. But our Prime Minister's determination to confront it face on, and that we have the ability and the strength thanks to the modernization of Indian defense forces
Yes.
and the absolute our own Atmanirbhar made in India, Akash Tir and other air defense systems, and the BrahMos missile, we've been able to give an appropriate and
Oh,
absolutely
absolutely. As far as the
grounded
military
answer.
conflict is concerned, there's no comparison between India and Pakistan today. In fact, global powers are waking up to what India was able to achieve. Kanchan Gupta, advisor of the the Information and Broadcasting Ministry, also joining us. Kanchan Gupta, the Prime Minister had this one line in Hindi. He said, "Roti khao, varna Modi ki goli to hai hi." So the military message is very clear. We're not going to bow down to terror. We're not going to hesitate before acting on terror. It is for the public in Pakistan to wake up and smell the coffee. But do you think that's possible?
Well, it's for Pakistan to decide whether it's possible, but what the Prime Minister has done today is that he has not only addressed the people of Pakistan, but also the world at large, making it very clear that India has never been an aggressor state. India has been a victim of transborder terrorism. India has held its peace and patience all this while, and now it has become intolerable. And if this continues, India will not hesitate to strike back at the terrorists and the state which sponsors terrorism,
Yes.
transborder terrorism. The fact that he gave a comparison between the two economies, India and Pakistan, is because if you see how India has outstripped and outgrown Pakistan's economy, and where Pakistan stood along the various markers of its uh, uh, entering into a violent conflict with India,
Yes.
it will be very clear that India has not been impacted, or the Indian economy has not been impacted by Pakistani belligerence.
Yes.
But the Pakistani economy has been definitely impacted by India's response to that belligerence. So this it is significant that the Prime Minister has pointed out that India is big, India is large, India is the place where it's all happening. And as a big country, as a rising power, we have the capacity to absorb losses, but we have also the capacity and ability to inflict punishment on
Absolutely.
those who sort of uh, try to impede our progress. So
Absolutely.
this
On that note, I actually want to shift our attention to the other government that we were going to talk about. I do thank my colleague Aman Sharma for joining us. Kanchan Gupta and Veena Sikri will stay with us because we're shifting our focus on the Bangladesh's interim government chief, Muhammad Yunus. He's feeling the pinch today. But instead of any course correction, like paving the way for an election so that the public's mandate can be implemented, he's blaming India. Yunus has been quoted as making alarming statements on Indian hegemony, quote unquote. He has apparently told political players in Bangladesh that the country is in a major crisis due to Indian hegemony. He has convinced himself that it is due to India's machinations that he is facing rebellion from within. From attacking Indian northeast states to now blaming India for conspiracy, this seems to be coming from the favorite playbook of all anti-India voices. Provoke India and then also blame India. Reality is, Yunus is unwilling to give up power that he was given only for an interim period so that the country can hold elections and get back onto the democratic process. Now he has other ideas and is being opposed tooth and nail, not by anyone else, but from the country's army chief itself. Faced with growing resentment, how long can he make excuses and continue to remain in power? That's a big debate coming up with our guests in just a bit. But first, why is this power struggle deepening in Bangladesh? The interim chief, Yunus, wants polls not before mid-2026, but the army chief is insisting on the original timeline, that is the end of 2025. Yunus supports the creation of a humanitarian corridor to facilitate aid to Myanmar's Rakhine state, but General Waqar-uz-Zaman opposes this idea over national security concerns, arguing also that such a decision should be made by an elected government that must prioritize national security. Yunus insists on making certain decisions critical to the future of Bangladesh, but the army chief opposes it because he doesn't have the popular mandate. Yunus has been known to be soft on extremists, backing dialogue with the likes of Jamaat, but the army chief is opposing this. Yunus is also backing a council-led transition period which has been shot down by the army chief, who wants a clear timeline on elections. Let's take a look at Bangladesh's dangerous spin under Yunus. Why has he become so unpopular so quickly? Problem number one, from the outset, he promised to hold early elections, but he has yet to provide a specific date or month. Both the army and other political parties are worried about this delay. The army, the BNP are demanding that elections be held as soon as possible with only minimal reforms that Yunus can execute. Problem number two, Bangladesh struggling significantly economically, especially in attracting foreign investment and aid. US aid has already been withdrawn. Switzerland has also stopped its donations. In the first quarter of this year, foreign investment has dropped to nearly 1/4 of what it used to be in the same period last year. According to Bangladesh's Bureau of Statistics, food inflation is upwards of 10% in January this year, and even non-food inflation is closing to the 9.5% mark. Another problem is Yunus's inconsistent foreign policy, criticizing countries like India that have helped it over the years, and that is unsettling investors. He is growing closer to even rogue countries like Pakistan. Meanwhile, investors and foreign countries both are uncertain about who truly holds power. Professor Muhammad Yunus, the chief of the Bangladeshi interim government, has again and again made extremely provocative statements as far as Indian northeast states are concerned. He's been seen to invite China as far as this equation is concerned, called Dhaka as the only guardian of the ocean for the entire region. And finally, a reality that is beginning to become concerning, the extremist tilt. Lifting of bans on the likes of Jamaat-e-Islami, expansion of groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir, and no accountability of riots and atrocities on minors. Let me quickly just tell you who stands where as we speak. Now, Yunus is not just blaming India, but also internal forces for a war-like situation. He says the government will take actions on any hurdles being created by consulting the public. But how does he seek to consult the public is unclear. The army chief is pointing to deteriorating law and order situation and blames infighting for the same. A subtle message to Yunus perhaps. And Sheikh Hasina, the former Prime Minister, has blasted Yunus for selling national interest to stay in power, pointing to how he came to power with the support of dangerous terrorist elements. So with this political turmoil prevailing in Bangladesh, this is of course a situation that India has to monitor very closely as well. But the big question is, how long can Yunus continue to push? Let's go across to our guest, Kanchan Gupta, Senior Advisor of the INB Ministry, Veena Sikri, former Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh. Both continue to be with us. Professor Brahma Chaleni, Strategic Affairs Expert, and Major Reza Ul Karim, he's a researcher and foreign affairs expert, joining us live from Dhaka. I do thank you all for your time. Major Reza Ul Karim, I'm beginning with you because you have more perspective being in Dhaka. How long do you think Muhammad Yunus can sustain himself in this conflict with other major players politically?
Thank you, and thanks for highlighting this point. Yes, in the current situation, actually, we had a very strong expectation from Dr. Muhammad Yunus that as he is a very globally known and influential person, he will be able to bring certain remarkable changes, especially in the economy of Bangladesh. But after 8 months, actually, we are not that optimistic now because the investors they are not the way we had been expecting in that same scale. The investors are not coming to Bangladesh, and it's very normal. Yes, there are few, but the way we have expected not up to that mark. And the reason is that, see, an interim government is for a temporary period of time. It's not for permanent. So any investors, whenever they will think to come to Bangladesh, they will have the first questions and the first answer to them, that how long this government will be there, how long our project will be there. If our project duration is the accomplishment of our project, if it takes 3 years, and if the government stays for 2 years, then that is uncertain to make the project done. So that's why the investors will not be quite interested at this interim government period
I get your
to
point,
continue that.
but
Yeah.
he seems unwilling to give up his chair, isn't it? Do you think the other political
Uh,
players and even the army chief who has come out in full opposition will be able to convince him?
Actually, there were some misunderstandings between army chief and Dr. Muhammad Yunus, and mostly due to the provocative some statement used in news media, and the backup reason was the corridor issue. Basically, corridor issue, it's a very sensitive issue. Any interim government should not go for such kind of decisions. So, and if they go for this kind of decisions, the especially the security advisor should have been discussed with the army chief, the defense
Yeah.
personnel, and also the political other related stakeholders like Bangladesh Nationalist Party, one of the biggest party. So these kind of political party stakeholders and the other scholars and the military persons, especially the defense forces members, they should have been a part of that discussion. But
Okay, fair
suddenly
enough.
this
No, fair enough.
uh,
We understand the reasons why he's being opposed or challenged, but the issue is just what is the future for Bangladesh politically? Kanchan Gupta, do you think that martial law or some sort of a situation of that sort is imminent in Bangladesh now?
No, for martial law, you have to have the army in power, and I think it's too early to come to any conclusions. But there are three or four developments which have happened with extraordinary speed. One, this whole thing begins with stories, rumors, messages that Yunus is planning to remove the army chief and bring in a person of his choice. Once that story gathered steam, the army chief hit back, and he made it abundantly clear to Yunus that his is an interim government, a government that was supposed to serve as a bridge between the exit of the Awami League government and the holding of elections. So he should work on holding of elections. Yunus chose to ignore that red flag, and then the army hit back saying that none of the reforms he's working on are acceptable
Yes.
because his government lacks the legitimacy to bring in sweeping reforms, whether they are economic, whether they are political, or whether they are constitutional. And lastly, what I think sort of really upset the army was a very, it was a very immature, and I think I would call it even a juvenile trick of Yunus to let loose the cadre of the Hizbut Tahrir, who are a part of his arrangement by way of the NCP,
Yes.
and they have been taking out rallies in Dhaka demanding elections should be put off for 5 years. That what Bangladesh needs right now are reforms, not polls. And thirdly, that the army should be restrained to the barracks. That again has instigated the army to the extent that it has deployed forces across the national capital. You have some very heavy duty hardware out on the streets of Dhaka, and because of a general squeeze on information being put out by the Bangladesh media, we we are not really aware of the exact nature of the tensions that are brewing. But definitely, the times do not augur well for Yunus. Now, look, the army making a big show of opposing the American US suggested humanitarian corridor into Myanmar is just probably just an excuse, because the army had no problems with China offering to provide military assistance to Bangladesh, or to even the Pakistan army coming back and offer Pakistanis coming back and offering training to the Bangladeshi army. And also, this whole thing of setting up a joint military training base
Right.
between the Chinese PLA and the Bangladeshi army near India's Chicken's Neck. So all this was fine with the army. Why has it suddenly discovered that national sovereignty will be compromised by an American peace corridor, humanitarian corridor? So it is being used as an issue, and Mr. Yunus is a hoist on his own petard, because he thought he would play both cards, the
Right.
China card and the American card, like his friends in Pakistan, and sort of extract the best out of both of them. Now
Yeah.
that is not going to work, and the results are already showing.
No, absolutely. He has been pushed into a corner because the more the resentment grows, the very phenomena that brought him to power or gave him this interim power can very quickly turn against you. It was supposedly Brahma Chaleni, a people's movement, then ousted Sheikh Hasina and, brought about this government change. You can argue of, how spontaneous it was. But very quickly, it seems, people are realizing that Muhammad Yunus is only doing what suits him and not so much the country. Your thoughts on how long he can push his agenda before it becomes a flammable situation?
I think what we should worry about is that Bangladesh is becoming a mirror image of Pakistan, the country from which it seceded. Today, if you look up Bangladeshi newspapers, all you read about is chaos in Bangladesh. Blockades, sit-ins, protests, all kinds of things are happening in Bangladesh. On top of that, Dhaka, the capital, is experiencing muggings and robberies during daylight hours. So the situation in Bangladesh is quite chaotic, and elections will not make things better. Let's be clear on that. No, it's not the issue when the election should be held. The fact is that the elections will not be legitimate. After all, the largest political party, the secular Awami League, has been outlawed by Muhammad Yunus. So Yunus has stripped any future election of legitimacy. The past struggle today is essentially between the BNP and Yunus. And the army chief is now siding with BNP, because BNP is the Fauji party. The people who assassinated, who murdered Sheikh Mujib in 1975, those people and their sponsors went on to rule the country, right?
Yeah.
They formed the BNP, the first military ruler formed the BNP. The BNP is a party associated with the armed forces. And the army chief, General Zaman, his sympathies clearly lie with BNP. In fact, Yunus is now accusing the army chief, not directly, of course, not directly, but implicitly, he's accusing General Zaman of working with BNP to undermine the interim regime. So it's not that General Zaman has turned against Yunus. If he turns against Yunus, Yunus will not survive in office for even 24 hours. What has happened is that in recent months, General Zaman has become increasingly disenchanted with Yunus's leadership. In February, that is 3 months ago, he publicly warned of rising lawlessness under Yunus, saying that we are going through a chaotic situation.
Yes.
Now, look at what's happening in Bangladesh today. They have released terrorists, convicts, Islamist convicts from jail, and filled the jails with political prisoners. Just this month, more than 40,000 people have been arrested, largely members of the Awami League. And it tells you a lot because you have heard no protest from any Western nation.
Yeah.
It goes to show that for the West, human rights promotion is a geopolitical tool to target regimes that it dislikes. And when there are human rights abuses by regimes that the West backs, the West keeps quiet.
Absolutely.
So Zaman and one last point is that General Zaman and Yunus, in terms of their geopolitics, are not different. After all, it was Zaman who played a key role in installing Yunus. And after he installed Yunus as head of the interim regime, he went to the US, which fitted him on a long tour.
Yeah.
It really conveyed clearly that, that the US was thanking Zaman for his role in the regime change in Dhaka. Today, the geopolitics still unites Zaman and Yunus. But the fact is that the BNP wants early elections because it believes the path is open for the BNP to come to office.
No, you're right. And that's why both parties are kind of saying, oh, internally we mustn't fight. They're pointing to an internal fight that could play into the hands of external forces. And that is why they're sending these signals to each other. You're absolutely right. But Veena Sikri, I want to take forward from what Brahmachaleni said. The legitimacy of any elections that take place, which also brings into focus that whatever is the space that should normally go to political opposition in Bangladesh is actually coming from the army chief. That isn't an ideal situation. That isn't how it should be. It should be political opponents who should be holding Muhammad Yunus accountable, but he's clearly taken away their political space.
No, look, let's be very clear on this. It was the army which appointed Muhammad Yunus last year, after there was this public, discontent expressed with former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Now, the army, please recognize that the army is the only source of stability and authority in Bangladesh today. It's the army or the president. Between them, they control, they're the only two constitutional institutions. Muhammad Yunus is an illegal, unelected regime. Legitimately, he has no power whatsoever. Now, if he was appointed as head of the interim regime on August 8th last year, that was at that time being considered okay for a short while, a few months, and then there'll be elections.
Right.
But the Muhammad Yunus, please understand the second point about him, he is a puppet. He has no power on his own. He is acting at the behest of the Jamaat-e-Islami and all other Islamist organizations. He is absolutely doing their bidding all this while.
So in this conflict between his side and the other, who do you think is going to eventually come out trumps?
Certainly the army, because the army is the source of stability and authority, and Muhammad Yunus is an unelected person. And he actually has violated every condition of being called a caretaker government or an interim government, because he's kept Islamist people in his party. And even the people in his party have now moved out, some of them, and in his government have moved out, and some of them have formed this National Citizen Party.
Yes.
And realize, the most important point to understand is that Muhammad Yunus realizes now at the end of 8 or 9 months that he is extremely unpopular. Extremely unpopular. And even then, and second point, maybe I tell you, please understand that the army had a darbar on the 21st of May, which is a very unprecedented kind of an event, where all the officers were called, including those serving abroad on Zoom links and so on. And the 5 points given at the end of that are a direct attack on Muhammad Yunus, and that no further anarchy or mob violence will be tolerated. Right. And in fact, that's the situation. It's complete anarchy in Bangladesh.
So the problem here for India is this: in the interim of, where the pushes and pulls in Bangladesh figure out what happens next, even if it's the army that is going to supersede what Yunus wants, what really happens to Bangladesh? Whether there will be more lawlessness, more riots, more chaos on the streets, that is the biggest question for us.
The only answer is to have free, fair and inclusive elections.
Precisely, but is that possible at all, as Brahma Chaleni is pointing out, is the other big question.
It is possible. The banning of the Awami League is not a legal event.
It can be overturned, surely.
Authority ban the Awami League at all.
All right. I'll leave it at that. Unfortunately,
I just want to add one point.
A truncated debate today. I've run out of time, but I look forward to having our guests soon on the show again. Back home, the family members of Indian Army Colonel Sophia Kureshi, who came into the spotlight for holding regular press briefings about Operation Sindoor, joined Prime Minister Narendra Modi's roadshow in Vadodara today. Colonel Qureshi, remember, is a native of Vadodara. Her family, including her parents, brother Muhammad Qureshi and sister Shaina Sansara, attended the roadshow. I spoke to them earlier about the start of their family. Here's that exclusive conversation. Thanks a lot for speaking to CNN News 18. Sanjay, Shaina, Halima ji and Taj Mohammed are all joining us. Shaina, I want to begin with you. You attended the Prime Minister's roadshow today. Just share your experience. What made you go there and how did you feel when you saw the Prime Minister today?
एक्चुअली जो हमारे जो ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर नरेंद्र मोदी जी, उनको मिलना, उनको देखना, ये एक बहुत ही किस्मत वाली बात होती है. जब पहली बार मैंने नरेंद्र मोदी जी को आज देखा रोड शो में, उनका जो ऑरा था, उनके जो फेस पे जो तेज़ था, जो रोशनी थी, वो बहुत ही डिफरेंट थी और वो लोगों को बहुत ही इंस्पायर कर रहे थे, बहुत ही मोटिवेट कर रहे थे. और मेनली जो सबसे ज़्यादा जो था, नारी सशक्तिकरण, पूरी फीमेल ही थी वहाँ पे. आई थिंक 45,000 से भी ज़्यादा लोग थे, गर्ल्स, लेडीज़ थी, हर तरह की, हर फील्ड की. और हम सब वेट कर रहे थे और जैसे ही हमने मोदी जी को देखा, पूरा वो एक लहर होती है ना, एक अलग ही तरह की थी. और हर तरह की वहाँ पे जो फीमेल्स थी, एक लगता था एक जो माला है जिसमें डिफरेंट तरह के जो है फूलों से बुनी हुई थी, जिसमें हर तरह के लोग, चाहे वो हिंदू हो, चाहे मुस्लिम हो, चाहे सिख हो, चाहे ईसाई हो, सारे लोग मिल के खड़े थे और नरेंद्र मोदी जी का जो है स्वागत कर रहे थे. और बहुत ही अच्छे, बहुत ही अलग तरह की फीलिंग थी, बहुत ही जॉयफुल मोमेंट था और बहुत ही पेट्रोटिज्म वाली फीलिंग आ रही थी कि हम आज अपने देश के प्रधानमंत्री के सामने खड़े होके उस मोमेंट को जो विटनेस थे और उस मोमेंट को हम जो एंजॉय कर रहे थे, वो बहुत ही अलग था.
एब्सोल्युटली. हलीमा जी, मैं आपसे पूछना चाहती हूँ, आपकी बेटी को पूरे देश ने, पूरे विश्व ने देखा. वो ऑपरेशन सिंदूर की एक फेस बन गई थी जब उन्होंने प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंसेस करी. आपकी क्या बात हुई कर्नल सोफिया जी से उन प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंसेस के बाद? क्या बोला आपने अपनी बेटी को?
सोफिया जी से तो कोई बात ही नहीं हुई है. हाँ. लेकिन बस सब टीवी में देखा, देखकर उसमें बहुत खुशी हुई जब फर्स्ट टाइम पे देखा था. और वो हमारे देश के लिए जो किया है हमारी बेटी ने, तो मुझे बहुत खुशी है उस बात के लिए. बाकी बात तो कोई चीज़ नहीं हुई वहाँ से. तो मुझे बहुत ज़्यादा हो रहा है, वो बड़े गौरव की बात है, लेकिन मेरी बेटी नहीं, सारे देश की बेटी है. और इसलिए मुझे बहुत खुशी है कि जो बहनों का सिंदूर उजड़ा था उनका बदला लिया, और वो भी एक लेडीज़ ने लिया, इसीलिए खुशी हुई. और हमारे यहाँ कोई कम नहीं है, ना लड़की ना लड़का, दोनों का बराबर है, कभी किसी में कमी नहीं है. और हमारी बेटियों को आगे बढ़ाना चाहिए, उनको पढ़ाना लिखाना चाहिए और इस काबिल बनाना चाहिए.
Shaina ji, do you want to share a little bit of what conversations you had more about your sister? I saw that you wanted to come in there.
जब मैं तो पहले एक्चुअली बड़ौदा में थी और उसी सेम डे मैं मुंबई पहुंची मॉर्निंग में, और रात भर मैं सोई नहीं थी. तो मुझे किसी ने फ़ोन किया, मेरे फ्रेंड्स लोगों ने, कि देखो टीवी ऑन करो. तो मैंने बोला टीवी मैं अभी सोने, तो मुझे ऑन नहीं करनी. तो बोलते प्लीज़ गो एंड वॉच, समथिंग इज़ डिफरेंट ओवर देयर. तो मुझे लगा पता नहीं क्या है. तो जब मैंने टीवी ऑन किया, देखा, तो मैंने देखा जो है कर्नल सोफिया कुरेशी और विंग कमांडर व्योमकेश सिंह जो थे, वो ब्रीफिंग कर रहे थे. हमारे इंडिया ने जो है वो टेररिज्म के अगेंस्ट में मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में जो बहुत बड़ा जो है कदम उठाया था. तो ये देख के मुझे बहुत सरप्राइज़ हो गया, लेकिन इतनी खुशी हुई मैं आपको बता नहीं सकती कि हम जब देश के लिए कुछ करते हैं. मेरी सिस्टर एक पार्ट है डिफेंस का, और अपनी कंट्री के लिए जो लड़ना और पार्ट एक आतंकवाद के खिलाफ, वो एक अपने आप में एक बहुत बड़ा अचीवमेंट है. और मैं उसकी सिस्टर हूँ, ये मुझे बहुत ज़्यादा मतलब गौरव महसूस होता है. बहुत ही ज़्यादा अच्छा लगता है कि मैं मेरी सिस्टर की ट्विंस बहन हूँ. बहुत वो फीलिंग एकदम बहुत अलग है, मैं शब्दों में बयान नहीं कर सकती.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल. मैं आपके फादर ताज मोहम्मद जी से भी एक सवाल पूछना चाहती हूँ. आप तो आर्मी से बिलोंग करते हैं, आपकी जनरेशंस आर्मी में सर्व कर चुकी हैं. तो ऐसा क्या था जो लेसन आपने अपनी बेटी सोफिया को दिया कि वो भी आगे जाके चाह रही थी कि वो आर्मी ज्वाइन करे? ऐसा आपकी क्या शिक्षा रही है उनको जो वो फॉलो करती हैं?
हमको बहुत ही गर्व होता है कि हमारी बेटी ने बहुत अच्छा कार्य किया, राष्ट्र के लिए किया, और आज हम उसके बहुत बड़ा महसूस करते हैं। और खुशी तो इतनी हुई है कि उसका बयान करना ही मुश्किल है। और जैसा कि आज रोड शो में हम गए, वहाँ पर अपने नरेंद्र मोदी जी, प्रधानमंत्री जी को देखा, उनके दर्शन किए और भी गर्व महसूस हुआ। और अभी हमारी वहाँ पर जब देखा एक चीज़ मैंने कि नारियाँ बहुत ज़्यादा थीं, तो वो हमें मालूम पड़ रहा है कि हमारे देश की नारी सशक्त है और उसके लिए और भी शिक्षा देना चाहिए अभी।
आपकी अब क्या उम्मीद है? सोफिया जी इतनी फेमस हो गई हैं, उन्होंने पूरे देश का नाम रोशन किया है, ऑपरेशन सिंदूर का एक फेस बनी है। क्या उम्मीद रखते हैं कि आगे जाके आपकी बेटी और क्या क्या करे?
उसने बहुत बड़ा कार्य किया और हमारे देश के प्रधानमंत्री ने उसको वो कार्य सौंपा और उसने किया। और जैसा कि हम हमारे घर में ही हमारे पिताजी वगैरह ही बोला करते थे, एक भारत श्रेष्ठ भारत और वयम राष्ट्रीय जागरयाम, वो सत्य है, बस वो होना चाहिए। जी,
मुझे बताइए ताज मोहम्मद जी कि आप लोगों ने सेलिब्रेट कैसे किया जब आप ऑपरेशन सिंदूर देखा, उसकी प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस देखी, आपकी बेटी कर रही थी, तो घर में कैसा माहौल था? कैसे सेलिब्रेट किया इंडिया की सक्सेस को?
हाँ देखिए, ऐसा है कि हमारे लड़के संजय ने पूरा मिठाई बांटी पूरी सोसाइटी के अंदर, और जितने गरीब अनाथ लोग थे उनको दोनों सभी को खाना वाला खिलाया, बहुत खुशी मनाई, मतलब बहुत ज़्यादा खुश हुए।
मैं एक सवाल आपसे पूछना चाहती हूँ, हमारे देश के जो दुश्मन देश हैं उनको आप क्या मैसेज देना चाहेंगे ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के बाद?
उसको ही मैसेज देना चाहिए कि वो हमारे देश से सावधान रहे, क्योंकि हमारे देश की नारी शक्ति बहुत स्ट्रांग है और सेना भी बहुत स्ट्रांग है। अब हमसे वो खुद सावधान रहे हैं, हमने उनसे सावधान नहीं होना है।
जी, हलीमा जी आप कुछ बताना चाहेंगी? व्हाट इज इट दैट यू मिस अबाउट सोफिया एज अ चाइल्ड? लाइक उनके बचपन की आपको कौन सी याद सबसे ज़्यादा आती है?
बचपन की याद ये आती है, जब वो छोटी थी तो कभी भी अकेले नहीं रहती थी, मम्मी को साथ में चाहिए। और एक बार बीमार हुई तो वो हॉस्पिटल में भी मुझे साथ में सुलाया था।
जी,
उसके बाद उसने जब पढ़ाई करी और ये पीएचडी कर रही थी, पीएचडी छोड़कर वो आर्मी में गई कि मुझे आर्मी में जाना है। मैंने कहा ठीक है आप जा सकते हैं, और जो उन्होंने किया है सब कुछ उसके लिए बहुत खुशी है। और मैं चाहती हूँ जितनी महिलाएं सभी लोग अपनी बेटियों को इस तरह से पढ़ा लिखा के और काबिल बनाएं और देश सेवा के लिए भेजें।
बिल्कुल, देश सेवा के लिए। Shaina, in fact, you were sharing earlier about the kind of commitment that your sister has shown and the kind of work that she has done and how inspired you feel as a twin sister. Tell me more about the kind of effort and work that Sophia has put in.
और सोफिया के बारे में एक चीज़ बोलूँगी मैं कि मैं ना हमेशा मैंने एनसीसी किया, पढ़ाई की, स्पोर्ट्स, सब चीज़ में हमेशा से आगे रही। सोफिया जो थी, हम दोनों ट्विन सिस्टर है, सोफिया जो चलती थी ना तो उसको पैर थोड़े टेढ़े जैसे थे। लोग कई बार उसका मजाक भी उड़ाते थे कि पोलियो जैसे चलती है क्या, तू चल नहीं पाती है। आज वही मेरी सिस्टर जो है, मेरी मम्मी ने इतना मोटिवेट किया, पापा ने इतने मोटिवेट किया, और मतलब हमारे घरों में पहले से ही जो है वो झांसी की रानी लक्ष्मीबाई की जो है कहानियाँ सुनाई जाती थी, वीर गाथाएं सुनाई जाती थी एक्चुअली। उसका जो मोटिवेशन से, मतलब आप बिलीव नहीं करोगे, जब मेरी सिस्टर का सिलेक्शन हुआ लोगों को लगा मेरा सिलेक्शन हुआ, क्योंकि मुझे आर्मी में जाना था। नोबडी बिलीव दैट कि सोफिया का सिलेक्शन हुआ, उसे डीआरडीओ में जाना था। तो ये एक उन गर्ल्स के लिए बहुत बड़ा संदेश है कि आप कैसी भी दिखते हो, आपकी बॉडी कैसी है, आप कैसी भी हो, आप कुछ भी कर सकते हो। अगर आप चाहते हो, आपके अंदर वो जिद है, आपके अंदर जो जुनून है देश के लिए करने का, आपको कोई रोक नहीं सकता। आप आगे बढ़ो, आप आगे बढ़ के ही रहोगे। और हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी भी हमारे साथ है। आपकी अगर मदर, मेरी मम्मी है जो, अगर वो पापा जो सपोर्ट नहीं करते, उन्होंने उस टाइम पे हमें सपोर्ट किया जब गर्ल्स को पढ़ाया नहीं जाता था, रोक दिया जाता था आगे बढ़ने से, उनको निगलेक्ट किया जाता था। उस टाइम पे मेरी मम्मी बोलते थे नहीं, मेरी बेटियां किसी से कम नहीं है और इन्हें आगे बढ़ना ही है और आगे पढ़ना ही है। और वो आज प्रूव हो चुका है।
जी, आपके फादर मदर दोनों का बहुत कंट्रीब्यूशन रहा होगा। किसी भी फैमिली में कोई बच्चा अच्छा करता है तो पेरेंट्स का बहुत कंट्रीब्यूशन रहता है। हलीमा जी, आपको क्या लगता है, आपकी बेटी की कोई एक स्पेशल चीज़ जिसकी वजह से आज वो इतना नाम कमा रही है?
आज खुशी की बात यह है कि हमारे जो देश की महिलाओं का सिंदूर जो उजड़ा था उसमें बहुत दुख की बात थी। तो वही ध्यान में आया कि उस वक्त कैसे वो लोगों के दुखी थे, और आज जो ये किया है मेरी बेटी ने, तो आज उनको कितना उन महिलाओं को खुशी मिली कि भाई जो उनके हस्बैंड को कत्ल कर दिया गया था और आज उनका बदला लिया, तो उनका जो सर है ऊँचा हुआ। और इसी तरह से अगर कोई भी इंसान हमारे देश के लिए देश बांटने का काम करेगा, हिंदू मुसलमान का नाम लेके उनका कत्ल करा गया, तो हम सब एक हैं, किसी से कम नहीं है। और हम देश के अंदर अपने देश के लिए हम सब कुर्बान दे हो सकते हैं, लेकिन हम उनको साथ कभी नहीं दे सकते दूसरों को जी। और यही है हमारा शहर कि सब लोग हम मिलकर एक साथ रहेंगे, और चाहे हिंदू हो चाहे मुसलमान हो, एक साथ रहेंगे तो कोई हमारा देश का कोई बिगाड़ नहीं सकता है कुछ भी।
बिल्कुल।
और हम सब एक हैं और हम किसी के से डरते नहीं हैं। अगर वो कुछ भी कर सकते तो हम उनका मुकाबला कर सकते हैं, और हमें किसी से डर नहीं है, ना हम उनके आतंकवाद से डरते हैं ना किसी से।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। संजय जी, आपके थॉट्स, आपकी सिस्टर को पूरा देश सेलिब्रेट कर रहा है, what comes to your mind when you see your sister being in the armed forces, you know, not just raising the women flag but of course the flag for your family as well?
उस समय इट वॉज एक्साइटेड मोमेंट, लाइक यू नो द ड्रीम कम्स ट्रू, क्योंकि जिस ज़माने में जब उन्होंने आर्मी ज्वाइन करने की सोची, तो मुझे याद है वो PhD कर रहे थे, और बीच में जब शॉर्ट सर्विस कमीशन निकला एंड शी फिल्ड अप द फॉर्म एंड शी वॉज सो एक्साइटेड कि उसने जाकर वहाँ जैसे ही उसका सिलेक्शन हुआ उसने अपनी PhD क्विट कर दी और देश की सेवा ज्वाइन करना प्रेफर किया। और किसी भी देश के सोल्जर के लिए, बीइंग फ्रॉम द आर्मी बैकग्राउंड, आप देख सकते हैं जनरेशन्स में एक फौजी का एक ही सपना होता है, या तो तिरंगे में लेके आओ तिरंगा या तिरंगे में लिपट के आओ, मीन्स अ सोल्जर टू बी इन द वॉर। एंड व्हेन इट वाज अ मोमेंट कि दुश्मनों से बदला लेने के लिए हमारी डिफेंस फोर्सेस, हमारी गवर्नमेंट मिलके ऑपरेशन सिंदूर कर रहे थे, और बहनों का जो स्वाग उजड़ा है उनको वापस लाया गया, उनका बदला लिया गया। सो इट वाज अ मोमेंट कि नहीं, शी इज़ द वन कि इसमें उनको लीड करने का मौका मिला, प्रेजेंट करने का मौका मिला। दैट वाज द एक्साइटेड मोमेंट एंड आई शुड से इट इज़ अ ड्रीम कम्स ट्रू। इससे बड़ा कोई मोमेंट एक फौजी के लिए नहीं होता।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। To be a soldier is to be in war. I really love that line that you have said. But what was the reaction like? Like, what did you do immediately after you saw Sophia on TV? Were there tears? Were you emotional? Were you celebratory? What did you do?
जी बिल्कुल। सबसे पहले तो व्हेन आई स्विच ऑन द टीवी, मैंने देखा टीवी में, मैंने फील की नहीं सिस्टर ही है, मैं बोला मम्मी शायद सोफे इज देयर। मम्मी बोले देखें, तो व्हेन वी सी दैट शी वाज देयर इन द प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस, वी वर लाइक सरप्राइज कि वो, बिकॉज हमें कुछ भी नहीं पता था कि वेदर शी इज़ पार्टिसिपेटिंग, बिकॉज कोई इन्फॉर्मेशन शेयर नहीं होती है। सो जब ये देखा, इट वॉज अ सरप्राइज फॉर अस एंड वी आर वेरी हैप्पी, वेरी एक्साइटेड। ऑन द स्पॉट जब हमने देखा कि ऐसा हो रहा है तो खुशी की लहर थी। और एक पहले से कुछ दिन 10-15 दिन जो भी गुजरे थे, हमारे मन में था कि यार देश में ऐसी चीज़ हुई है तो इस चीज़ का बदला लेना चाहिए, इसका हिसाब करना चाहिए, दुश्मन को इसका जवाब देना चाहिए हमें। और जब हमने टीवी में देखा कि ये दुश्मन को बदला लिया गया हमारे, और उसमें शामिल होने वाली एक महिला, वो भी हमारे देश से, वो भी हमारे घर से, तो वी वर लाइक इट वाज लाइक अ फेस्टिवल एट आवर होम। लोग खुशी में पागल थे, कुछ आंखों से खुशी के आंसू थे, और बस फिर क्या था, मिठाइयाँ बांटी गई, सोसाइटी में किन्होंने पटाखे फोड़े, कुछ लोगों को खिलाया गया एंड ऑल, इट वाज अ फेस्टिवल फॉर अस।
Absolutely. Festival for the entire country, and so proud all of the members of our armed forces have made us. तेज मोहम्मद जी और हलीमा जी, मैं आपसे आखिरी सवाल करती हूँ। सेम सवाल है आप दोनों के लिए। तेज मोहम्मद जी, आप पहले बताइए, वो एक चीज़ आपकी बेटी के बारे में जो स्पेशल है, जिसकी वजह से वो इतना अचीव कर पा रही है, जो देश दुनिया को नहीं पता, ऐसा क्या खास है सोफिया जी में?
उसकी ऐसी कोई वो नहीं है खास, तो वही है कि बोलते कि पापा बाकी अभी आप ये बताओ सभी को, अपनी ज़्यादा अपने रिलीजन में बताओ, जो जैसे मुझसे में लड़कियों को पढ़ाते नहीं है, पढ़ाने के लिए आगे बढ़ाएं और देश के लिए तैयार करें, उसकी खास ये है बस, ये सभी लड़कियों को देश के लिए तैयार करना है। बिल्कुल
बिल्कुल। हलीमा जी, आप क्या बोलना चाहेंगी, क्या शेयर करना चाहेंगी?
मेरी बेटी को भी यही है कि एक वो भी महिला है, उसको यही महिला हुआ है कि भाई एक महिला का सिंदूर अगर जड़ा गया है तो मैं भी एक महिला हूँ, मुझे उसका बदला लेना चाहिए। और उसके अंदर बहुत जोश था कि नहीं, मैं ये कर दिखाऊंगी और किसी तरह से भी ये बदला लेना है।
बिल्कुल। थैंक यू सो मच हलीमा जी, ताज मोहम्मद जी, शाइना एंड संजय। Thanks a lot. This is the family of Colonel Sophia joining us here live and exclusive on CNN News 18, and what a proud family that is.
Co-powered by. This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
The world in the next couple of years to become the third largest economy globally. Joining me now is Dr. Sanjeev Sanyal, economist and member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Thank you very much. First of all, many congratulations. India now the fourth largest economy officially as per the IMF's outlook that came out over the weekend. What is fascinating though is the speed at which it has happened. Every trillion. The first trillion got crossed in 2007. The second trillion took another 7 years from 2007 to 2014. Then the next trillion from 2014 to 2021. But the last trillion, that is from 3 trillion to 4 trillion, has gone in just the last 4 years. What would you attribute this faster pace of growth to, so much so India is now the fourth largest economy in the world?
Well, welcome to the joys of compounding. You know, as with any kind of compounding, it is the result of now some 35 odd years of sustained growth. But what is interesting is that since in the post-COVID period, India has not only grown at a consistent pace, but by a very large margin over other large economies. So growing at somewhere in the 6 to 7% range consistently when many countries, most countries in the world are struggling to even manage 2-3% growth. In fact, countries like Japan or Germany are barely growing at all. So this is a situation where clearly this compounding process is now really flicking into our favor, and we are able to generate these kinds of expansions.
But Mr. Sanyal, you know, one thing of course is that, you know, we're number 4 now, and if we continue in the same trajectory, 6% plus growth over the next couple of years, the expectation is that India would surpass Germany by the middle of 2027. Germany is currently growing at under 1%, and India is growing at over 6%. But it also comes at a time of intense, you know, economic uncertainty, particularly on the trade front. You've seen the Trump tariffs, etc. What do you reckon are the headwinds between now and, let's say, 2027, when India is expected to surpass Germany, that could be an impediment in this fast rate of growth?
Well, there are two parts to this. When you're talking about international headwinds, do remember this is about relative performance when you're talking about rankings of economies. So if it's hurting us, it's also hurting Germany. So from that limited perspective, international headwinds don't really matter because, you know, both Germany and India face it. So we are growing at 6%, they're growing at less than 1%. So in that sense, you know, in about 18 months to 24 months, we will surpass them. But in absolute terms, this is an issue. We are, you know, growing at somewhere in the 6.5% range. But of course, despite the fact that we are the world's fourth largest economy now, in per capita terms, we are still quite poor. So we would like to grow even faster than this, perhaps over 7% a year. But it's difficult to do this under these circumstances. So, you know, if in purely from a a ranking perspective, it might not matter. But in terms of, you know, Viksit Bharat and our ambition of becoming a developed country over the next quarter of a century, this uncertainty does matter.
So what needs to be done to amp up that per capita income growth? Because India is currently about $2,500 per capita. China is probably 5 times more than that, more than $10,000 per capita. And in a big country with a young population, a large young population, how do you amp up that particular parameter?
So first of all, we are no longer at 2,500. We are now somewhere around $3,000 per capita income, which is still low, and there too this compounding process will matter. So of course, I point out to them that in order to have higher per capita GDP, you need to have larger GDP. So this growth that we just talked about is important, but we need to speed it up, and we will be doing this, sustaining this growth at a time where the external environment may not be as conducive as was the case during China's high growth phase. There are many things that we therefore consequently need to do in terms of being flexible about the new environment. One of them is that we need to build quickly on bilateral trade deals because if we do want our export sector to add to our growth, then we need to adapt. So as you know, we have now recently done a free trade agreement with the UK. We are in advanced discussions on free trade with the US as well as with the European Union. And of course, we already have existing ones with Australia, Japan, the UAE and so on. So we are building up a network of bilateral free trade agreements in order to be able to keep our export markets open. So that's one big area. The second big thing is to keep our domestic growth momentum going. And there, of course, many important things have happened in the last few years. One is that we have managed to bring inflation into a reasonable range of 2 to 6% with the inflation targeting. And in fact, right now, inflation is running at only 3%. So that...
Namaste, Jai Hind and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I am Anand Narsimhan. BJP leader Nishikant Dubey shared a declassified 1963 telegram of the US State Department alleging that former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and her father, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, were responsible for decisions that led to the territorial concessions to Pakistan